seemingly being tempered, but it doesn't matter. Most Americans don't recognize that, like, it's
Yeah,
not
we
about
had
like
2 years of negative great wage growth under Biden. You're not going to make up that money. People are going to be
yes.
worse off than they were when he got elected. It's over. You can't run on the economy. That's done. You need to run on the issues that actually work for you instead of raising the importance of the stuff people hate you on. Oh, hey. Oh, yeah, I'm on. Sorry, I just need to unmute it. I had the stream going on in the background. Yeah, what so
What's going
yeah.
on?
Well, I have all the election results pulled up here.
You want to
But
share your screen or something, or I can just like.
just go to the New York Times page. But if like since you were just talking about Israel, I think we could go to like the article like I wrote about which one was it? Oh yeah, George Bush first. I think that would be kind of like a
Yeah.
more like smooth thing. I think you had that like pulled up in the corner the other day. But that's
Yeah,
the most
we can start out with that. Hold on.
yeah.
Let me pull up the elections page. Where the fuck is it? Live election results, top races to watch from last night. We'll be talking about that, but before we do that, I guess we should talk about America's responsibility and America's involvement. That's a better way to segue that into your piece, I think.
Yeah.
What do I mean by this? Well, a lot of people claim that the United States of America is simply a small bean in this small bean conflict. Israel's a small bean state, obviously. Look how tiny they are. They're just defending themselves by preemptively fucking launching the most unimaginable amount of death and destruction to civilian populations over and over again throughout its history. But also on top of that, America is simply just there's a lot of reporting that's being done right now showing that like the United States is at odds with the war crimes that Israel is committing with our weapons, right? With our missiles. They keep saying like, oh, well, I know John Kirby and even Blinken at a certain point said there's not allowed to sorry, Kaya just got up. I don't know how. I thought I actually had her locked into her bed. Okay. Sorry. I lost my train of thought. Okay. Israel is there's no red lines for Israel. There's nothing we can do. We can't stop them from doing anything. They're just going to keep doing what they want to do while also simultaneously trying to wash their hands clean of the atrocities a little bit. You had the lieutenant general who said everything that Israel does on the ground in Gaza is completely out of our hands. We wash our hands of this. You had Blinken warn, or at least like throw out feelers in the media that the United States is telling Israel to use smaller bombs. Even the concept of a humanitarian pause rather than a fucking full-blown ceasefire is not just a semantics difference. It's a way to try to get everyone's attention away from Israel's atrocities and war crimes and acts of collective punishment that is mercilessly happening in Gaza right now, so that things can cool down a little bit as they can continue maintaining their apartheid structure. However, there's a different time from a while back, as you wrote about on your Substack, the president who stood up to Israel and won, George W. Bush, AIPAC, and the proven folly of unconditional aid. So,
this was like a really fascinating story to research and write about, because you never see this happening now. But basically, in 1991, well, in 1989, when Bush became elected, his whole vision was he was going to create the new world order. He was going to turn the entire world woke with a completely U.S. dominant world, and part of that scheme involved for U.S. dominance included being dominant over Israel. So Bush, uniquely out of I think every president we've had in the last 50 years, actually turned the screws on Israel, and it wasn't very difficult. He just he conditioned some aid that was coming in there on stuff that he wanted them to do. Yes, this is George Bush, like H.W. Bush, the guy who killed JFK. Yeah, senior, the guy who killed JFK, the guy who who did Iran Contra, killed a bunch of nuns in Central America, like Desert Storm. That guy, and he was the guy who stood up to Israel in this huge way that nobody really has before, and it had massive consequences. Israel not only listened to him, but their politics there completely changed overnight, where they suddenly realized, oh shit, we have to we can't like do whatever we want. We have to elect guys who are not going to be fucking up our relationship with the U.S. And we have not done that ever since. And this kind of goes over what he did and why we haven't done it ever since then, and the consequences of us not doing that since then. So, I think you can play the clip that I have linked there. It's pretty fun. It shows like what the environment was like.
So before we even get to that, one thing that we should be talking about here is you said aid. The nature of this aid, in my opinion, is pretty significant. So what this aid was, if I'm not mistaken, is the $10 billion of loans, right?
Yeah.
That Israel was slated to get specifically for the purpose of building settlements.
No, it was for housing for refugees who were immigrating from the Soviet Union. What Bush was saying was, guys can have this money to pay for this, because Israel needed this money. $10 billion was a seventh of their entire GDP, and like they just couldn't. Their economy was pretty weak at the time. They could not absorb these people without aid. And what Bush said first, it was, we'll give you this money, but you can't spend the money on settlements in the West Bank. Yeah. When you give these people their houses, it has to be in Israel proper. And then he and his Secretary of State James Baker, who is a total killer, said you have to stop settlements. You have to freeze them entirely if you want the money. And you have to go to this peace conference and meet with Palestinians for the first time ever. And Israel had to do what they said because they needed the money. They had nowhere else to go. And so Bush just stood up for himself. He beat AIPAC and he kind of humiliated them, changed their politics. It's basically why their government fell apart. It got Yitzhak Rabin elected. It led to the Oslo Accords. And then Bill Clinton beats him, and then he totally follows the AIPAC line. There's these infamous quotes where AIPAC is talking about how they have influence. They have so much influence over Clinton. They know all of his friends. They're selecting his administration, and he really this is a really fun bit.
Here it is. I found it.
Yeah.
Throw the bums out.
Here, we'll show this.
Yeah.
I have shown this before.
That's a loose translation of the Hebrew posters in this Jerusalem rally, but the bums these Jewish settlers refer to are not Israeli politicians, but President Bush and James Baker. Settlers are conservative by most political standards, but if they could vote in the American elections, Bill Clinton would carry the West Bank in a landslide.
They said he would carry the West Bank in a landslide. Well, good thing there's at least in 2015, there was 60,000 votes in the West Bank. If you think about it, that could literally legally vote. So,
yeah,
there's a lot of Americans there now.
Yeah, all of their the
and Palestine,
who the insane lunatic who wanted to enslave all the Arabs. He was from Brooklyn. Baruch Goldstein, who killed all these people in a mosque, also from Brooklyn. That's not to say that Israeli fascism is an imported thing, that they're all small beans there or whatever, but there is a lot of these people aren't even really actually from the country. They're LARPers.
Yeah. I believe Noah called it the zealotry of a convert.
Yeah.
But some of the most rabid, absolutely psychopathic monsters that were too extreme at the time for even Israeli politics, who have now been able to actually create a solid constituency and have taken advantage of Netanyahu's precarious, horrible position to genuinely get their points across. All of those guys are a lot of those guys are American backed.
Yeah, are their Arab descendant. A lot of those guys have parents who were from Iraq named Abdullah, and they're it's kind of funny because everybody says, oh, it's all these it is true that white Europeans are a lot of the Israelis, but those are the relatively more progressive ones. The brown Israelis are actually the ones who are really crazy.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense when you think about it, because the entire point is one, there was a lot of integration that I think completely disrupted the psyche of a lot of the Arab Jews. So that's number one. Because there was a
they were so racist to them. They said they couldn't understand democracy.
Yeah. Like teaching them how to eat, like assuming that they only eat with their hands, things of that nature, like even small things like that, all the way to what you're describing. So that integration was like, that integration paired up with like a constant need to like prove your loyalty, that you were, especially because like Zionism is, or maybe not in the beginning, but like Zionism became an anti-Arab project. Like it hinges on being anti-Arab.
Mm-hmm.
That's precisely the reason why in Israel, the way that it is described in its own demographic data is that you're either Jew or you're Arab, and all of the Jewish Israeli citizens who are of Arab descent are considered Jewish. All of the Palestinians who are Muslim and Christian are considered Arab. So
yeah. So it's, when people say it's a religious conflict, it's completely ridiculous. There are Jewish Palestinians who get treated terribly. They were like, and I'm saying this as a Jewish person myself, so nobody can cancel me.
Yeah. Yeah, someone in the chat was saying, I don't like the way this guy's talking about the situation.
Nah, no, they're my people. I can say whatever I want.
Yeah. Well, you'll get hit with the at this point, you'll get hit with the self-hating Jew title quickly.
Nah, nobody hates Jews more than Zionists. But that's another story.
Yeah. All right. So let's finish this, because on the other side, hold on, let me watch this
Palestinian
video.
leaders, supporters of that radical national liberation movement called the PLO, confess that these days their hearts are true blue Republican.
Mr. Bush knows the area, knows the parties, and probably will do more to get this conflict resolved quicker than Mr. Clinton or Perot.
Oh yeah, he knows the Palestinians real well. That's what, when you're CIA, I mean, you kind of have to, I think.
Yeah. So yeah. So like in the article, like basically, Reagan was obviously very supportive of Israel, like during his 8 years in office. They were actually like Sims for Netanyahu a little bit. They like Reagan made all of his national security advisors read some book that Netanyahu wrote. This was when he was like a not very well known guy. But when Bush comes in, he's like, we're going to solve peace in the Middle East. We're going to get oil forever. We're going to like create the New World Order. And they realize immediately, like, okay, so we have to stop the instability in the Middle East. Oh, wait. Oh, yeah, there was a Wojciech Arafat. Somebody mentioned that. But Bush and Baker realized pretty quickly the problem here is that Israel is like refusing to talk with the Arabs. They're expanding settlements constantly. They're antagonizing people. They don't have any interest in peace. So at the bare minimum, they have to stop the settlements here. And like if you scroll down a little bit, there's like a funny like kind of story where they get like this mixed up when they're first meeting with the prime minister there, Yitzhak Shamir, who actually was a member of a terrorist organization in the 1940s who tried to collaborate with the Nazis. He was the prime minister by then. Yeah, Lehi.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was the same organization that like old ass guy that the IDF put out there.
The oldest 95-year-old reservist that like somehow is just standing with the power of pure evil.
He got milkshake dog.
Lehi, I don't know how you say it. I always fuck it up. Or Stern Gang.
Yeah, you guys need to read that. Like Abraham Stern, like Yehi. Those people are fucking crazy. It's so funny. And that guy, like the old reservist they like interviewed him in a car, and he was like, kill all Arabs. If you have an Arab neighbor, shoot him. The prophecies have foretold this. So they don't bring that guy out anymore. But basically, so what happens here is that Bush and Baker meet Shamir in the White House, and they're like, bro, you got to stop the settlements. This shit is making stuff really hard. And Shamir said, that shouldn't be a problem. And they thought, oh, he just gave up. We won. But Shamir was saying that they shouldn't have a problem with the shit that he's doing. He's saying that like the U.S. shouldn't even question him, which is insane for you to do as basically a client state. And then he announces more settlements, and Bush gets pissed the fuck off, and he never forgives him. He's like, I'm gonna get this guy like gone.
Yeah, it's also ridiculous because you're getting $10 billion.
Yeah,
to prop up your economy, because like you have nothing without that.
Yeah, well, it wasn't the Soviet Union hadn't fallen at that point, so they didn't need that much money now. But they still asked for $4 billion in aid. Like, it's not like they didn't need a lot of stuff. So Bush is pissed. He sends Baker to AIPAC, and he's like, "You guys need to fucking calm down. There's no greater Israel. That's not happening. You have to stop settlements. You have to reach out to the Palestinians." This is James Baker. This is like the guy who stole the election in 2000. And so Netanyahu, who's the assistant foreign minister at this point, he gets pissed off. He starts crying, and he's like, "Why the U.S. is listening to lies? They're so stupid. We hate them." And Baker bans Netanyahu from the State Department. And then he nearly gets banned from the White House because they all hate him. They think Netanyahu's this annoying asshole who just is entitled to thinks that he's entitled to whatever the U.S. does. Robert Gates is another guy who's like the CIA director. He was Secretary of Defense under Bush. Like these are not like left-wing guys. These are guys who are just being realists.
Yeah.
And they're like just trying to do what's in like what they see as the interest of capital in the United States. And they're like, these people are fucking everything up. They need to calm down. Like, get real.
Yeah, no, it was since the 90s and onwards, especially now, Israel's like endless blood and soil politics against Palestinians is constituting like a genuine national security concern, because even the Abraham Accords, when you think about it, the pivotal achievement of the Trump administration, led by the brilliant Jared Kushner, the best boy, this completely writes off Palestinians, but while our other client states in the region will be compliant and have already been engaging with Israel behind closed doors, maybe not like openly and openly normalize relations on paper, the population is looking at Israel's treatment of Palestinians and openly recognizing it for what it is. So the arrogance of the maintenance of that apartheid regime and the continued violence is genuinely constituting, in my opinion, a national security threat, even from the perspective of like right-wing politics, even from the perspective of like
from the perspective of Israel. Like the Shin Bet head said that like he said this summer that the settlements and like the violence there was screwing up their military because they had to have their entire army in the West Bank to protect these lunatic settlers. And this is the head of their FBI, basically, and the right-wingers there called him woke. That was what they said.
Yeah.
They said the deep state has infiltrated Shin Bet, and so we don't have to listen to him. And then this happens, and they're like, oh my God, how could this have happened? They must, this is a totally unexpected thing. We need $14 billion because we don't have enough like equipment. It's so like just, it's farcical. These people cannot govern.
Yeah, there's like they keep melting the Merkava tanks that we put zero infantry around with like bathtub rockets that they made with like used parts inside of Gaza.
Flipping. They're doing Halo shit. They got Master Chief in the Al-Qassam brigade.
Yeah. So is there anything else you want to cover on that? Because like this in my opinion is like showcasing yet another. It's yet another moment in time where it's like a snapshot of like America's obvious level of control and influence over Israel, even though dumbass Nazis always try to be like, oh, Israel controls America. It's like, no, you fucking idiot. No, not even remotely. Like this is just
we can stand up to them. Biden could stand up there and do exactly what Bush did, and things would change in an instant.
Yeah,
it would change instantly. So basically what happens here is that Bush doing this, he actually gets a lot of criticism. So what happens is that he tries to condition the $10 billion in aid on settlements. And what AIPAC tries to do, they're like, we don't like Bush, fuck Bush, we don't even need to like listen to him. We're just going to go to Congress and we're going to pass it, and he's going to have to listen to us. They literally said like it would go through Congress like a hot knife through butter. And they have their guys in the press saying Bush is anti-Semitic. He hates Israel. He cares more about the settlements than the Arab countries. And Bush is like, fuck this. And he schedules this impromptu press conference where he totally like dismantles these guys. He accuses AIPAC of like trying to interfere with U.S. national security. He compares them to people who opposed the Gulf War. He says that like he cares more about peace than Israel does. His Secretary of State at this point gets incorrectly quoted as saying, fuck the Jews, they don't vote for us. He actually said, fuck AIPAC. So he totally just like
incorrectly quoted.
Yeah.
Wait, by the way, I don't know if you got to this part of the history, but like they did this literally to the Clintons as well.
Yeah.
And Bill Clinton was like much more favorable to the Israeli position.
Yeah,
than,
he never did
Bush
anything
was.
like this.
Yes, but, and even then they said it about Hillary Clinton, I think.
Yeah, because they just like they don't want any like their own phrase here is zero daylight. There can't be any difference between U.S. policy and Israeli policy, which is insane. No other country even thinks of asking for that. But like Bush does like an incredibly good job here. He calls himself a lonely little guy. He says they have 1,000 lobbyists trying to take over Congress. And 86% of Americans end up agreeing with Bush. So AIPAC has to give up. Yitzhak Shamir like has to like go to the peace conference, and his like Shamir's government collapses over this, and Israel elects like Yitzhak Rabin, who is not a peacenik. He was a lunatic general. He was like had a terrible reputation of war crimes, but he wasn't attached to the settlements like Shamir was. So so Bush and Shamir are Bush and Rabin are like
he's known as a bone crusher. That's important. I always bring that up. Like in the first Intifada, like his reaction was to deliberately get the police and the military to break the bones of like children as young as 5 years old. Okay, because
this is literally the most peaceful Israeli. Like not even exaggerating. Actually, the most peaceful Israeli.
Yeah, literally. Well, so peaceful they fucking they murked him.
Yeah, they did. Netanyahu got him killed. But basic like so Rabin and Bush are like, we're gonna solve this shit. We don't care about the settlements. We're gonna like create a two-state solution. But Bush flops. There's a recession. He gets owned in the election. He only gets like 30% of the vote. He gets destroyed. And then Clinton comes in and he's like, we love Israel now. And then the peace process collapses.
For the record, Clinton also hated, as far as I understand, I can't find this exact quote. I was looking for it for you specifically.
He hated Netanyahu.
He also hated Netanyahu. Members of his cabinet had literally said Benjamin Netanyahu is a liar, and everything that comes out of his mouth is a lie. He is a overall like really awful person to be around. He's very arrogant and very smug. I think something along those lines.
He also, after he met him for the first time, he like said like in his aspiration to his aides, who's the fucking superpower here? Because Netanyahu was just so arrogant. But Netanyahu never gets elected in 1995, 1996. If Clinton shows any backbone, somebody like Netanyahu never wins if he thinks that if Israelis think that the U.S. is ever going to stand up to them. It's because of the posture here of the U.S. where we let them get away with anything and everything that they've been able to go so far to the right, because their voters logically think, well, what's the point of voting for people who want peace if the U.S. is going to let us get whatever we want? Yeah. So from that perspective, voting for Netanyahu makes a lot of sense, because he's just operating in the circumstances that we give them.
Yep.
Yeah, and like they went hard against Bush here. They said he was eroding the taboo against overt anti-Semitism. This is over loans. This was over him saying, we'll give you $10 billion in loans if you just change a policy. And they called that anti-Semitic. So you shouldn't listen to any of the shit these guys give you. They'll do it to George Herbert Walker Bush. They'll do it to anyone over anything. It's completely dishonest.
Yeah. No, it's a cynical deployment of anti-Semitism in an effort to justify like increasingly more violent Israeli state policy. Always. They did it to every single person. I guess like they haven't done it to Joe Biden, who is, I would say Joe Biden is personally invested in the Zionist project more than like any of these other guys ever were. Like I think back in the day, all the way from Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush, like maybe even fucking Bill Clinton personally, I think that's like the change that happened. But at the time, Joe Biden was already like a hardliner Zionist, right? Even back then, when these guys were in power, Joe Biden was openly saying things like, if we did not have a Jewish state in Israel, like in that region, we would have built one ourselves.
Yeah, he's a crazy simp.
Yeah, he's a big time simp. And what else was I gonna say? There's another thing I wanted to bring up. I mean, like Reagan was mostly just motivated by whoever the fuck was in his cabinet. Like in a lot of these instances, like at early stages,
he had Alzheimer's.
Yeah, like in the earlier stages, like these guys don't have like a like a genuine personal investment. Like even with Carter, he is like, yeah, sure, he's like Christian, so there's like a little bit of that, but overall I think it's like mostly people that are making decisions for him, and he's just kind of going along with it. And in the beginning, like, he has no fucking concept of what's going on in Israel at all. So it's just,
this is something I'm planning on writing about. But Biden's team has been so like just lazy with foreign policies, not even like a specific ideology. They've just kept up with so many Trump policies.
Yeah.
Like that's, I think one of his biggest legacies will be how he set Trump's legacy in stone, where he took these batshit ideas from Trump and he made them basically consensus bipartisan policy. It's the case with the Iran deal. It's the case with the Abraham Accords. They just didn't have any will to move on from what he did.
That's one aspect that I will push back on. I think, and this is, I have no like real reason to believe this, beyond the fact that the prisoner swap happened with the $6 billion with Korea.
Yeah.
Like the South Korean $6 billion that was supposed to go to Iran being unfrozen. I do think the only exception for Biden foreign policy, I agree with you, even the Afghan pullout was a continuation of Trump's policies. Obviously, like the way that we're dealing with Israel and continuing along with the Abraham Accords, that is a continuation. But I do think that quietly and also, before October 7th, publicly, the Brandon administration was, in my opinion, trying to start the normalization process with Iran.
Yeah, well, they have a good guy in charge of that. Robert Malley is actually pretty like decent, especially in terms of U.S. foreign policy.
Yeah,
but they've kind of like left him out to dry. They haven't really supported him as much as they could have.
Yeah, but I think that like we're now operating with our understanding of like give Israel all the money and all the weapons to kill as many Palestinians as possible.
Yeah, the bear hug strategy.
But before then, it did seem to me like they were trying to desperately counter China's attempts at building a presence in the region. Very successful attempts, mind you, because like right now there's videos coming out every day from fucking like Houthi guys in Yemen stepping on the Israeli and American flag and like and making like sing-along videos about how they're sending fucking drones into Israel, right?
Yeah, they said they sent troops into Gaza. Like I don't know how the hell they'd even do that.
Yeah. They said they wanted to walk through Saudi Arabia and march into Israel, but Saudi Arabia did not allow them. And that they welcome the international community to complain and criticize them, but like, they will forcibly instill democracy there. Now, the reason why I mention that is because Yemen, until not long ago, was under full-blown blockade. Like it was a man-made genocide that the Saudi regime, with America's backing, utilizing literally Al-Qaeda operatives, as a matter of fact, armed with U.S. weapons in Yemen, were bombing the shit out of densely populated areas in Yemen, and also creating genocidal conditions. How the fuck did they all of a sudden move from withstanding a genocide to being able to send rockets into fucking space that end up, getting intercepted by the Israeli Arrow defense? How did that happen? It happened because China started the normalization process between Iran and Saudi Arabia. So that is the reason why I think, and ended the blockade as well. So that is part of the reason why I believe America was quietly trying to also get involved with Iran, because they see the writing on the wall that like they do not want to concede. They do not want to concede or leave this entire region to China to deal with.
Yeah, they had that huge deal between the Saudis and the Iranians earlier. I think earlier this year. Yeah. So they can't be as harsh as they want to, which is why Israel has put them in such a hard situation, which is why it's so bizarre that they are just defending them to the hilt. Like, these guys are fucking everything up for you. Just, you don't have to be like a raging like leftist like George fucking Bush, the CIA George Bush, who killed John F. Kennedy in 1963 personally. He was the guy who did this. You don't, like I said this at the end, he's not a good person. He did none of this out of the goodness of his heart, but he did this because it's just like the basics. It's the basic truth. like if you want to have stability in the region and influence in the region, you have to bring Israel to heel. And like there's just a fear of doing that. But like this shows that like you have nothing to be afraid of. You hold all the cards here. You just have to be somebody who just fears nobody, like George Bush did, and you can get a lot of results. Biden does not have that CIA swag, sadly.
The problem is that this is like dual arrogance, right? On the one hand, we've talked about the arrogance of like of the Israeli government and the maintenance of the apartheid, thinking that this will not be costly, right? As far as security goes, you wrote about that as well. Netanyahu was the security candidate. He was the security candidate, and all of that completely perished. On October 7th.
He's done. There's a lot of other articles I've written about that. That I feel pretty good about. I compare this, probably the best comparison I think is the Tet Offensive, because like Lyndon Johnson, Netanyahu was banking on this, the idea that he could manage this conflict forever and get everything that he wanted at once, like how Lyndon Johnson thought that he could have a limited war in Vietnam and keep South Vietnam standing. And that concept, that's what the Israelis called it, the concept, that has shattered, and he's, well, like what you said, like about how he's dependent on the far right ministers. These people, and that's another thing that I wrote. You kind of have to have all this together at once.
Yeah.
These people who are openly genocidal, worship terrorists who killed like 30 people in a mosque, worship the terror attack, like want to create a theocracy, like take all the land from the Sinai from the Nile to the Euphrates. He's totally dependent on these people because everybody else wants to put him in prison.
Yeah, and I don't understand how there's the domestic arrogance, right, for Israel, but I don't understand how like more I guess like realpolitik focused American foreign policy advisors don't recognize that like that also looks bad for them, because you know, if we're moving towards multipolarity, it is ridiculous that to just like let Israel loose and do whatever the fuck they want and not realize that the rest of the world, specifically the global south, that is way more interested in cutting deals with China on better loan conditions that China's giving them, like that they don't see that the America's power is waning.
Yeah, well, Bush recognized it because he didn't give a fuck, and then he lost re-election.
It's just very well. Bush didn't lose re-election for that reason, though. Obviously,
yeah, he did, and I made that point. That was like a myth that the AIPAC created. The two states where the most Jews were at the time were New York, which was a blue state, and Florida, which Bush won. So it's like he did lose a lot of the Jewish vote, but it wasn't impactful. He lost for other reasons.
Yeah. All right. Well, let's move on to your bread and butter. You have long been credited for correctly calling the transphobia narrative and the transphobia line not being successful. Yeah. You know, I myself have also called it, but like, you know, it's fine. Whatever. Like, I'll give you the credit. It's cool.
It's chill.
But yeah, and we're seeing that again. I mean, we have the Christopher Rufos of the world. Still pushing as desperately as possible.
No win, Chris. No rings, Chris.
Yeah,
he's never won. He has zero
not
dubs.
even a Mickey Mouse ring, really.
No,
like,
no, you can't even say
stupid.
That.
Yeah. And
Lee Rufo.
Yeah, I mean, thinking of like how far the Republican Party has fallen. You look at James Baker, and then you look at like the likes of Christopher Rufo and Matt Walsh running around like headless chickens, still pushing in the immediate aftermath of like a very successful off-season election outcome that showed time and time again that like Republicans are a victim of their own success and that their policies are insanely unpopular. And they're making
it worse for themselves. Abortion is already like enough of an issue. You don't need to compound it by making your main message besides that, like just graphically describing top surgery. It's not like it's moronic.
Dude, that's why I loved Mike Pence, who would just like go up on stage and go against Nikki Haley, who was like the only competent person there. Even though on Israel she's like a John Fetterhead a little bit, but she's
on the Ben Shapiro grind with John.
Yeah, exactly. But on like abortion, she's like, hey, this is not good. Like we should stop this. You know, this is we need to stop talking about abortion the way that we're doing. And Mike Pence would be like, oh, there's an unrelated question about immigration. I'm going to somehow even tie it back to a federal ban on abortion that I think is a necessity, which was psychotic.
Like the guy who runs, it's like the guys who runs the Babylon Bee had like a mental breakdown earlier today over it, where he said like he was posting biblical like apocalyptic narrative shit over that. They're like, these guys are actually like true believers. They're psychos. But anyway, you can see here, there's a great battle in Ohio between weed and abortion. Weed narrowly won, but they both won in landslides in a Trump plus 12 state. He like relative to the country, very Republican states. They also like weed and abortion. So amnesty, acid, and abortion is the winning message. George McGovern ended up winning in the end. But you can see there that the abortion thing does something really interesting if you look at the map. It did well in both the suburban areas around Columbus that like the never Trump Republican people have swung the Democrats, and it did well in the industrial areas in the Northeast. So this is the one issue that can unite both the well-educated rich suburbanites that are supporting Democrats now and the working class people, the Obama, Trump, Biden voters who mostly Obama, Trump voters who have swung away from them. So Gen Z with Ohio and abortion, swinging very because Ohio is Gen Z's favorite state, as you can see in the chat. This was a brutal result for them, and it was a long time coming. Yeah, swag like Ohio.
Yeah,
GOP doesn't have swag like Ohio. They have no skivity. They have no Riz. They have no Giat. Honestly, they're completely Rizless. It's really sad.
Yeah. Yeah, Kai Cenat hates Ohio. All right. Yeah. I can't believe I'm saying these fucking words that are coming out of my goddamn mouth. Okay.
I'm the Zoomer correspondent. I know all this shit. I've watched every Skibidi Toilet episode.
No, I have as well. But that's like Gen Alpha at that point. As a Zoomer, you're...
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, you're looking at Gen Alpha now in the way that I, as a millennial, looked at Zoomers. Now you're looking at Gen Alpha.
Yeah, rip my man, Titan cameraman. Gone too soon.
So... so this was slated to, as far as I understand it, like the polls were not off at all.
This is the thing that I have about 10 minutes to go through this here. You see the Biden world morons who are like, looks like they shouldn't have attacked Biden so much. Looks like people like Biden the whole time. It looks like the polls are wrong. The polls are right, asshole. The polls got all these races correctly.
Exactly.
The same polls that are saying that everybody fucking hates you got all these races right. So this isn't save you at all. It just means that all the stuff that that you're seeing in the polling about how everybody hates Biden but likes Democrats, that's true.
Yeah.
Drop out, idiot.
Yeah, specifically this one, like the one where it was like the New York Times did a poll that showed that an unnamed Democrat performs like 8 points better than Brandon.
Points. 18 points.
18 points. Like, it's fucking insane. It's so stupid. Alex Perrine once said something that I love and I repeat all the time. That and this was all the way back, I believe in like 2016 or maybe in near 2016, 2018, somewhere around those lines. I think it was the midterms elections where he was like, America loves the most progressive policy positions as long as it is a ballot initiative and not associated with a Democrat at all.
That's why I need to get the most generic Democrat ever, which is why Andy Beshear, if you look at him, he's the most generic white boy of all time, and he won in a Trump 30 state by 5 points. You have to get like the swaggiest, most generic-ass white boy of all time who's like not 80 years old, and you can just win like in states that voted for Trump by 20 points. Because Beshear there, like he's winning like coal counties, like from like full of like United Mine Workers, coal miners that haven't voted Democrat like since like the 90s. Like these are like crazy ass numbers. He won some counties here that like voted for Trump by 70 points.
Yeah, and also going up against like an insane amount of PAC opposition and like Mitch McConnell specifically.
Yeah,
Daniel Cameron is Mitch McConnell's guy.
Yeah, he's his boy, and he.
I think one important thing to consider with Daniel Cameron is though, and I think that abortion was also a prescient point here.
Oh yeah,
an important point. Daniel Cameron. What's up?
Even in Kentucky, it's like a winning issue.
Yeah, exactly. Daniel Cameron personally, as Attorney General, said that he would overturn or completely overlook the Democratic ballot initiative that was supposed to protect abortion in the state of Kentucky. I think like people don't forget that. That was definitely a reason as to why people were like, all right, well, fuck you. I'm not voting for you then.
Yeah. Bashir had this one ad that supposedly got played like 1 billion times from my followers who were in Kentucky. They said that they saw it constantly, where he got this rape victim who just straight up said, like in an ad, I was raped when I was 12 years old. I needed an abortion or my life would have been ruined. Daniel Cameron supports me not having that option. Just straight up, like in the ad. Just like fair, like no equivocating, no artsy shit. Just like straight up, just laying out the stakes of the issue. And all Republicans did is they said, oh, that's unfair. And they lost.
Yeah, they say that's unfair while simultaneously also like still being backed entirely by like these psychopathic, like, we must save the white families caucus, or like whatever lobbying groups, like family protection, the family protection, Moms for Family Protection,
Moms for Liberty. Those guys lost every race too in like fucking Iowa. Like
they fucking lost like teachers races. Like they lost local races where they're supposed to win.
Yeah, up like in state, like these are states like Kentucky and Ohio and Iowa and like Virginia. Like, well, Virginia's kind of coastal elite, but this is like middle America, and they're saying we don't want your shit. They're speaking on behalf of nobody except for themselves.
Yeah. I don't like, part of me is excited at the prospect of Republicans refusing to fucking learn their lesson, which is very odd because like one thing that I used to always say is that unconditionally Republicans love to win, right? Democrats love losing gracefully and not being in a position of power while still maintaining like enough seats in Congress to be like, to keep the lobbying going, and to keep the steady flow of funding, while, saying, oh, well, our hands are tied. Like, there's nothing better for the Democratic Party than having like gridlock in the Senate or in the House of Representatives with a blue president.
It's different now. The wine moms put like some fire in their ass. Like the wine moms want to win. Yeah,
and it's more so like Democrats still are in that position, in my opinion, for the the way that like the DNC operates. Like you said, they learn nothing from the midterms.
Yeah,
and they immediately ascribe this to Joe Biden, who's insanely unpopular. Like,
they won in spite of him, not because of him.
Yes,
I read this one book that was this total like kind of like dick sucking job for Biden, the last politician, and it talks about how he views the results. He thinks that the reasons Democrats won that year was not just because of him, but because he specifically refused to politicize abortion. They live in fucking bizarro land. They are like, they have no clue what's going on. If they win, it'll be because they've been dragged over the finish line. They do not deserve to win.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that like, if there's one thing that has happened that is a benefit to the labor movement, actually, as a matter of fact, it's their ineptitude. It's the ineptitude of the DNC, because like, I think the NLRB is just kind of running the show on their own, and the Democrats are like oblivious to whatever the fuck's going on there. Like the DNC is oblivious to that. So that's good. That's like, there are major W's coming out of that on that front. And also their inability to understand what the labor movement looks like right now is, I think, part of the reason why Shawn Fain was able to secure historic contracts against the big three. Because like, if you remember, even like 4 days out of like this massive strike, Joe Biden was like, oh, I'm not worried. I'm not worried.
He said it's not going to happen.
It's not going to happen.
All of his people running his administration have been around since the Clinton years, and they have this totally outdated mindset that makes them incapable of fighting the political fights of the 2020s.
Yeah.
They are not prepared for this. They're immensely arrogant. They are spiteful and bitter and think that they know better than everybody. And it's they're just completely clueless. So, like, independent of any ideology, that's why I think it's so crucial that there's somehow, some way, is a change in leadership here. Because if you have people like who are running these races, like Bashir also stood up for the Kentucky auto workers. He was like at the picket lines there, if I remember correctly. Like, it's just being on, you don't even have to be like a good person or a leftist or in any way. Just being somebody like Bashir or Whitmer or anybody else who has been on the front lines of politics since 2016, it gives them a totally different perspective where they're far more ruthless, far more able to win elections and utilize power. These people who have been in D.C. for the past 3 decades just do not understand.
Yeah, Big Gretch, my Palestinian queen.
Yeah, when she made the statement where she said, "Oh man, it sucks that shit's happening there."
Yeah, no, but that was great. That was actually like the appropriate way to analyze it. And like everybody obviously bullied her, so she had to back away from that position. But like, why the fuck would you not say that when you have a massive like Muslim constituency in your state?
Yeah,
like,
and it did suck that shit happened there. She was right. There should be peace. There's nothing that she said was wrong.
Yeah, she pulled a Selena Gomez, but in a good way, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And everybody fucking yelled at her and said that she was like anti-Semitic. So there was that one thing I wanted to mention. What was I gonna say? Hold on. We talked about Big Gretch.
There's Virginia. There's Democrats won in Pennsylvania, a big swing state by like 6.2 points. They froze out Young Clan. He's done.
Yeah.
You can't pass
I don't get it.
Now.
The CRT was such a prescient message. So such a good message. CRT and trans, child genital mutilation is happening in America. I thought was going to really push Republicans over the line everywhere, right?
No, they Virginia. They actually elected the first transgender member of their state senate.
Exactly,
Danica Roem, who ran on an economics focused message. Actually, kind of a fun like Goofus and Gallant career arcs with her and Lee Carter, because they were both elected the same year, but they have had very different kind of lifespans in politics.
Yeah. Oh, the thing I was gonna say is like even fake populist dipshits like Josh Hawley understand, and even fucking JD Vance. Like these guys are paid not to read the room, right? And even they recognize the like labor union momentum as they try to like cut messaging that's like kind of pro labor, but also like pitting them against like I don't know, electric vehicles or whatever. You know what I mean? Like trying to find a way to like
I think they're LARPing. They're LARPing.
Yeah, they're LARPing, but like in my opinion, that LARP indicates that like they still also recognize that this is a constituency that's important, that they like have the capacity to like win over. They're wrong, but
it won't work that way. They don't have the credibility.
Yeah, exactly. Except the Brandon administration is just like oblivious. But luckily, their oblivious nature is also, in my opinion, allowing the NLRB to like just run shit pretty aggressively.
Yeah, it's like in some instances, like in the State Department, where you have these people who are in charge who suck. Biden not really being aware of anything is awful. But like where you have places like the FCC or the SEC or the NLRB, you'll have people there who like the career civil servants or the political appointees who are a lot like more left wing on the issues. They're kind of given a free hand, basically.
Yeah, exactly. The other side of this is that, I mean, if we talk about like Biden's bona fides, if we talk about like what is happening under the Brandon administration, like the economy, not great. Inflation seemingly being tempered, but it doesn't matter. Most Americans don't recognize that like it's not about like
2 years of negative great wage growth under Biden. You're not going to make up that money. People are going to be worse off than they were when he got elected. It's over. You can't run on the economy. That's done. You need to run on the issues that actually work for you instead of raising the importance of the stuff people hate you on. And he's done the exact opposite of that.
Yes.
It's like asinine. They're trying to redo the 1996 election in a political and media environment that is decades removed from that.
Yeah, it is mind-boggling to push for that, especially because like it's in a weird way, it's like a lighter version of what Bernie Sanders would have ran on, or probably what Bernie Sanders would have been able to get away with if he was like to govern. Yeah. If he were to ever, be able to govern, and yet it's possibly the worst time to push for that.
And the worst messengers, because nobody trusts them. They trust Bernie. They might give Bernie the benefit of the doubt. But you have these people who have been around for decades and were doing deregulation their entire careers up until this moment. It looks cynical and fake.
Yeah. So it's odd. It's odd to run on that when you have the gift wrap of abortion. But yeah, as far as like the Republican Party's implosion goes, it's a race to the bottom on both sides. Like you have a historically unpopular president who is unpopular in ways that are not manageable. Like there's no way to combat the narrative that like you're
He's
fucking
too
old.
He presided over a bad. He can't get younger. He can't turn back time and make people have more money.
Yeah.
He can't like not look lost and out of it. He can't like suddenly be able to give a good speech. It's like Felix said, it's LBJ in 1968, but senile.
Yeah.
But Republicans are insistent on not taking advantage of it.
But they can't, because in a way, Republicans can't take advantage of it either, because like the problem within the Republican Party is oftentimes likened to Trump. And I think that's like a silly liberal understanding of the issue. They are like the 35-year project of the Federalist Society far predates Donald Trump. The only difference is under Trump. Under Trump, the dog caught the car, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because like,
and it was the worst time because they didn't have a messenger who could spin it in any way. It was bad shit compounded on top of bad shit. And I would argue actually that like them kind of colonizing the Trump administration with this kind of very unpopular Mike Pence social conservatism ruined a lot of the appeal he might have had in 2016 when he was a lot more moderate. He wasn't a huge culture war crusader, but now they have a bad message on the worst possible messenger. If they just got him like being some kind of like scummy New York playboy again, that might actually be a bit more effective.
Yeah. He's now also seen as like, I mean, he tries to portray himself as like an outsider again, but he was the fucking president. So like, in a weird way, he wants to maintain the W's that he got, like the Supreme Court justices, but that's completely associated with the abortion debacle for them, suffering from their own success in many ways. There's no way to, like, if I'm a Republican, I'm literally never talking about abortion. I'm only saying like,
I mean, they need to give up. They need to just say there is literally no path for them other than saying that we're going to bring back Roe. That is the only politically tenable position. You just have to concede because this issue is
then they lose the evangelicals.
It won't even. It just goes against their reason to exist.
Yeah.
And like it's just not like it's the kind of like busing with Democrats in the 1970s. They just kind of slowly had to concede on it as it made them just not competitive nationally.
Yeah. It's a tricky situation. I don't see any way out of it. Like that's what I'm trying to say. Like I think it's like a spiritual rift within the Republican Party that is born directly out of how successful they are. Because wedge issues are great if you don't actually succeed in implementing them. Because when you implement them, I always go back to this one poll. I forget where it was, but that Republicans don't believe the cruelty of the policies that they're pushing for.
When you try to run on what Republican policies are, people just say you're lying. Like you can quote their platform, they're like, "Nah, nobody would do this. You're making shit up. We hate you."
Exactly. Like they like it on as a message. They like it like they like the broader. They like the broader framing of it, owning the libs or whatever. But they don't actually like it when. When it's when it's actually implemented, like the criminalization of abortion, and there's no way that you can not own that anymore. Like everybody fucking knows that is the Republicans' fault. It's the Republicans' failure, and that's something they have to fucking sit with and live with. And even immigration in Florida, like Ron DeSantis pushing. So aggressively against immigration and like almost crippling the Florida economy, or even Ron DeSantis going so far out of his way to implement culture war policies that he ends up pissing off the number one reason for the state of Florida to even exist or have a fucking viable economy, and actually trying to use government powers against the corporation, which is like inherently the most anti-Republican thing you could do.
Yeah. I would I have a recording I have to get to, so this is the last thing I'll say. These are the problems Republicans face, these very deep structural fundamental problems. The basics of their platform are completely unpopular. Their leader is a lunatic who's probably gonna go to jail. They just like are in a terrible situation. There's no like structurally. The problem for Democrats is one guy who's older than God and everybody hates, who can leave at any time, and they have a huge bench of people to replace them with.
Yeah, that's the other side. Yes, we have a bench like of talent. There's actually people that could fill that role.
Yeah, and it's easier. Like it's completely easy. It's completely simple. It's just switching one guy out for the other, and then you have basically no problems. And the Republicans are stuck with all their shit. but they're insistent on making this go down to the wire for the third time in a row because I don't know, they think Joe Biden's been the greatest president ever. Anyways, so I've read a lot about that. I have all of the successors listed on a tier list on my website, editormentum.news. I'll see what happens at the debates. It was good being on.
Thanks for coming on, man.
Yeah, no problem. It's great.
All right.